Alrighty, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it this afternoon. I got right about 1:02. We'll go ahead and get started. I want to be courteous of your time. Please go ahead and before we get started, make sure that you put yourselves on mute. There will be an opportunity for some Q&A here near the end. So jot down any questions you might have as we go through it. We'll open that up near the end. But we'll go ahead and get started. The Greater Nashville Regional Council's Child Care Creation Grant webinar. Go ahead and move us forward here. All right. My name is Matt Von Lunen. I'm the Chief Economic Development Officer at the Greater Nashville Regional Council. I'm the point person here for this program, but definitely going to be supported by some of the other folks here at our organization, Michael Skipper, our Executive Director, and Amy Napoli, one of my co-workers in the Economic and Community Development team. This is a webinar agenda just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing here over this afternoon. Going to talk about the program focus, the requirements and the eligibility around this program that's been established. And then we're going to get into the application process and the timelines. These are in some ways somewhat aggressive because of the nature of the program that we have and the timing constraints that we have with economic and community development, the funding provider. So we'll dig into those and happy to work with you through that. Everything from the community opt-in process, which has been ongoing, to the outreach to the individual daycares, the application process, and the screening, and then go over any other key deadlines. As I said, we'll have questions at the end. On the web, please go ahead, snap this QR code, grab this link here. This is where we're putting everything related to the grant. It has our program guidelines, FAQs that we've received since we did our initial rollout. This is also where the application materials are going to be located as well. I will say that the recording of this webinar will be available on there, as well as the slides should be up there right now. We'll dig on right into the program overview. This money is community development block grant money that's come down from Department of Housing and Urban Development. It was passed as part of the COVID-related funding, and it's managed through the state of Tennessee Economic and Community Development Department. So the whole point of this program is to create or expand child care capacity in our region. Now, there was $9 million made available statewide from Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. The Greater Nashville Regional Council region, that's our 13 counties around Nashville, we got $990,000 to put out through to support this program. It's a regionally competitive application, so the applications that we receive will be put up against others within our 13 counties, and the maximum amount of funding that we can provide is $500,000. The focus that Greater Nashville Regional Council is putting on this is to make sure that we're not going to be able to support home-based daycare facilities, but we want to serve as many children as possible. The daycares must be participating in the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program, and the project must be able to expand the capacity or accommodate at least 20 more children as a result of the project. Who can apply? So here's the process of the application. It starts with the daycare operator. So they will take the pre-application with the project that they have in mind and send that over to their local government, whether that's municipal or the county level, depending on who's opted in. They'll then work with us, work with the county to go through a vetting process, make sure that the project is ready to move forward, at which point the county will move that application over to us at GNRC. We'll review the applications, do the scoring, and then pass along those that are going to be the finalists for the funding to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, because they are our contracting agency. These contracts will be between the local government and state Tennessee ECD. Opt-in communities. about 2 weeks ago, we rolled out this program to give our communities in our region the opportunity to opt into this program. If your county is in blue, that is the county government that will be working to support these applications and going through. If you also notice that there are some municipalities on here, City of Franklin, City of Gallatin, for example, those local governments will be the communities that have opted in. So some eligible projects, these are the projects that we can fund with this money. So acquisition of property, building, or structure, rehabilitation of existing facility to meet licensure requirements or expand, purchase equipment that is necessary to meet licensure equipment, or the clearance or demolition of structures to meet licensure requirements. This is the list of things that we cannot do. We cannot do new construction of a brand new facility. We cannot use the money to purchase supplies or furniture, to provide subsidies or supplement funding for tuition and enrollment. We can't use the money to pay any rental payments or reoccurring fees for utilities, as well as any other costs associated with operations and management. Now, as I said earlier, this is a community development block grant. So these funds are tied by all of the regulations of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Here's a list of the federal requirements that must be adhered to during the life of the project. This includes the CDBG, which I'll use interchangeably, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. This includes adherence to the national objectives, which is to support low to moderate income populations, remove slums or blight, or also for imminent safety concerns. For this program, we're focusing on the low to moderate income. Will be required to go through all the environmental review requirements, the Uniform Relocation Act. Davis-Bacon wages will be need to be paid to the contractor that we're to do this project, as well as everything under Section 3. Procurement standards, federal requirement, as well as whatever the local requirements through the county or municipality government must be adhered to. Record keeping and financial management, again, tied to the federal code, must support fair housing and equal opportunity, provide public meetings, and finally have a SAM registration. Now, this is the Systems of Award Management federal system that ultimately the local governments and the daycare provider would need to be registered with. So now we're going to dig into the regional guidelines, again, kind of focusing a little bit more on how this project will work in the Greater Nashville Regional Council area, focusing on that eligibility, how we're going to evaluate the application, how public meetings fit in with this, the requirement for a professional architecture report, the grantees and subrecipients relationship. I discussed environmental and as well as program administration. Then we'll go into timelines and what's in the application. We'll point out that the final guidelines we have a draft out. The final guidelines will be made available on the 21st on that website that I mentioned earlier. So the key requirements here is that the daycare facility must be licensed by the state or be in the pre-licensure process. It must also be participating in the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program. And as I said earlier, home-based daycares are not eligible. Professional architecture reports. So this is something that we might need to work with you depending on the type of project that you're looking to do. But if the project requires substantial changes to the structure, then the conditional applicants are going to be required to get a professional architect to generate a report. The reports need to describe the work that's done, why, potential issues that could pop up, and really just give that professional third-party approach to make sure that what we're doing to the facility is indeed going to be done correctly. The cost of the report is not reimbursable. I really want to stress that we will not be able to reimburse for any fees or anything related to the project that occurs before it is awarded. So that's something to keep in mind here, and that all procurement, as you go and try to find your architecture firm, must be done in accordance with the Tennessee CDBG manual. The public meeting requirement. So local governments will be responsible for hosting a public meeting to inform their citizens of the plans to submit a final application to GNRC and the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. This will be if after we've gone through and done that initial scoring and will be requested to complete the full application. That's where this stage will come in. This is a state requirement. Advertisements must run in a local newspaper at least twice, with the first one at least 14 days prior to the public hearing date. Environmental reviews. All projects must comply with NEPA. Again, this is federal funding and demonstrated through completed environmental review. So all the applicants must agree to use the Greater Nashville Regional Council services to conduct this environmental review. The fees set for these are set by Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development and range between $1,500 and $3,000. And the cost should be covered using grant funds awarded through the local government applicant. Administration. All grants must comply with state and federal reporting requirements and record keeping. I mentioned that earlier. The applicants must agree to utilize the Greater Nashville Regional Council's program administration services to meet these requirements. GNRC admin fees are set at 7% of the overall cost, and that's also established from the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. Generally, costs should be considered using the grant funds as well, just like the environmental. Now we're going to dig into the application process and some of the important deadlines. So as I said earlier, we're going to have the pre-application and then followed by the full application once those have gone through between the daycare provider and the local government to determine whether or not to move forward. So the pre-application here, who's going to be responsible for filling this out is going to be the daycare provider. So you're going to have the applicant name, address, a description of the project that you want to do. Because this money is community development block grant money tied back to COVID funding, we need to show that there's a relationship between the project that you want to do and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's also, we'll need to make sure that there's no duplication of benefits to make sure that we understand whether or not the daycare provider has already been receiving some sort of stimulus for childcare activities from another federal source. Then we go into the low to moderate income objectives. And this is what I said earlier, is that all CDBG projects must meet one of those national objectives, in this case, the low to moderate income objectives. And there's some different ways that we can show to do that. It will be going through either the individuals that work for your facility or by looking at the new students that you'll be adding to make sure that at least 51% of those are going to be low to moderate income, come from low to moderate income households. And we at GNRC are happy to work with you to determine that eligibility. The next on the pre-application is going to be the information on how many students you're serving now and how many you plan to be able to grow as a result of the project. And then we'll go into the budget information as well. As I said, the maximum grant available is $500,000. There is no match requirement. However, we do encourage that you leverage local funding to complete the project. And finally, a project schedule. As I said, we're bound by a very tight timeline. And the pre-application will be available again on that same website on March 21st. After that process, then we go into what we call the full application. This is really coming from the local government, those counties or municipalities. It's going to take a lot of that same information that we received from the daycare provider, and then go and add in additional information that we need to get from the local government, because they are going to be who ultimately has the contract with the State Department of Economic and Community Development. We'll discuss the process of selecting the daycares, which GNRC, we're taking a very active role in that, so we'll be able to help with that process of the narrative. Describe the partners, and then one of the things we will need to have as well before a contract would be awarded is just an MOU or an agreement between the daycare provider and the local government that explains how the process is going to work, have everything ironed out. We'll provide the requirements of that agreement in that final policies and procedures manual, but wanted to point that out here. And then performance measures as well. So this is ultimately what, at the end of the project, we want to be able to look back at and say whether or not we moved the needle and did what we said we were going to do to grow this daycare capacity. So these are done with outcomes and outputs, and that's the metrics of a physical project, such as add on an additional 1,000 square feet or purchase this piece of equipment, and then the output, therefore, would be the number of new students you might be able to serve, new low to moderate income students you might be able to serve, et cetera. And this full application will be made available by April 18th. However, I will point out that we're not going to necessarily wait for all the pre-application process to end before we roll into the full application. If a daycare provider is able to get everything together for that pre-application, work with the local community to get everything that they need done, then we want to be able to continue to move that process forward and not wait on the full application. So here we go, down the left-hand side, you see kind of the steps in our process for the application. So first is the community opt-in. So as I said, GNRC announced the program and requested local governments to indicate whether or not they were interested. These forms were sent in to GNRC, and I showed that map earlier for the communities that have opted in. Next up, GNRC is going to send notifications to the eligible daycare facilities located within those communities. We were able to pull that list from the state, able to show us who all is in the USDA food program. And so we wanted to make sure that all the daycares had the opportunity to know about this program. So we will be helping with that outreach process. Going into the pre-application, as I discussed earlier, we'll make it available on a form on our website so that the local governments can coordinate with the daycare providers can coordinate with our local governments. And there's the initial screening process where the local government can review those pre-applications, determine eligibility and competitiveness, and work with us at GNRC to answer any questions they might have. Based on those results, local governments then will take that pre-application, add those few pieces that I just mentioned, and submit the full application. Let me point out again that daycares are not applying directly to GNRC. The daycare applies to the local government. The local government then takes that information and applies to GNRC. At which point we're going to evaluate and score the applications. This is our scoring criteria here. It's slightly different than what we rolled out initially, but you'll see that the total number of points would be 100 points, and we will go ahead, rank those, and then allow the communities that have been at the top of the list, let them know, or we'll let everyone know, but then we'll go ahead and ask the communities that were at the top to go ahead through a notice of intent to go ahead and move forward with the professional architect report if needed, and then that required public meeting as well. And so, well, we'll get into the deadlines here soon, but we do want to point out that just kind of keep in mind with the local governments when your meeting schedule is falling to when you would want to hold that public meeting. Also keeping in mind that 14-day notice requirement that I discussed earlier, just to keep everything in line. Then the final materials. So conditional awardees will submit the professional architect's report and all of the documentation of that public meeting over to us. At which point we'll then go ahead, forward it to Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. As I said, that it will be the final contracting entity between the local government and the state. So we've already held our community opt-in starting week of March 21st. We're going to go ahead and begin that outreach process. The pre-application will be available again March 21st, due in the middle of April. give the local governments the opportunity to conduct that initial screening, then have the full application available, and we'll be accepting those up to April 29th. And the week of May 2nd, we'll go through and evaluate all those that we've received, and then move forward with the notice of intent and request those final materials by the middle of June. Other key deadlines, want to point out that we get the awards announced by June 24th, that the State of Tennessee Economic and Community Development would then work to begin that contracting phase in mid-July. We would spend this July conducting the environmental review, then go through the bid package submission with a goal of advertising for construction in August, opening bids in September, and then by May 31 of next year, we need to have 80% of our grant funds expended. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up for some questions. I am going to go through some of the frequently asked questions that we got after we did our initial rollout, and then we'll open it up to the broader audience. First is if there is a match requirement. Again, no match requirement, but we are encouraging leveraging local sources, and as I showed in the scoring process, that is one of the criteria that we're using for our scoring. Can the grants fund new construction? Unfortunately, this answer is no. Based off of the amount of time that we have, we cannot build a new building. However, in addition to an existing building is an eligible expense. City or county-owned schools with daycares, are they eligible? Yes, as long as all of the other activities and requirements are met. Question about church-based daycares, whether or not they're eligible for funding. They are also eligible. However, they cannot limit enrollment to just their church members, and religious beliefs cannot be part of the enrollment criteria. So that also includes that funds cannot be used to improve facilities or spaces where the primary purpose is for religious activity, like a sanctuary. And then again, why are there two applications? There are two rounds just to make sure that the local governments are able to work directly with the daycare providers, get all the information they need to then be able to submit it up the chain to GNRC and ultimately the state. So the first application will be used by the local government to assess eligibility, competitiveness, and that will assist the local government with that full application that goes on up. That full application will be evaluated by us at GNRC in determining the awards. And then after the professional architecture report and public meetings are completed, we'd be able to then submit that over to Economic and Community Development should you be chosen for funding to get the contract started. So we'll go ahead and leave it here. Any additional questions after today's webinar can be submitted in writing here, grants@gnrc.org. That helps us keep track of everything in one place, as well as we'll be able to post those to add on to the frequently asked questions that we have on our website as well. So with that, go ahead, we'll open it up for some questions. And I will say, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. There's always a possibility that you might have a question that we'll need to check on, in which case please put your email in the chat and we can get back to you with that answer in case we're not able to do it here live on this webinar.
And Matt, I'll just draw your attention to the chat if you want to take a look at it as well as you go through the Q&A.
Sure. The way I have this set up right now, I'm not able to see the chat. I might go ahead.
Well, let me go ahead and there's a couple of questions that I have not. This is Michael Skipper, everybody, that I have not been able to answer. There's a question from, I messed up the order here, from Candace about, Candace, if you're online, why don't you just ask your question? I wasn't able to answer it with any confidence.
Yes, I was wondering if, I know that you mentioned something about needing proof that a provider is not receiving funding from other grants, federally funded grant sources. And so I was curious if a provider applies or is interested in applying for the establishment grant, are they also for childcare? Are they also able to apply for this grant?
So it would depend on the nature of the application. I'll admit that I don't know a whole lot about the establishment grant. However, the role of the duplication of benefits is just to make sure that a facility isn't using two different federal funding opportunities to achieve the same project. So
Okay.
so that's what we would want to work with you on. We know that there's been a number of state programs. I mean, the need for daycare is huge, and we know that there's a lot of programs out there trying to work on that. We know that we have a very small amount of money to help do that, but that's the role of that question. And that's one of the things that we can, I would recommend putting out the programs that you may have been receiving or that you plan on utilizing in that piece of the application. It doesn't mean you'll necessarily become ineligible, but that way we have everything there should that question arise.
Okay, thank you. That helps. The establishment grant it's not related to, there's no funding related to anything construction wise or the purchase of a location. And so the two grants do very different things. And so the establishment grant helps provide supplies and materials for the classrooms. And so they do very different things. So that's really helpful to know. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Michael, any other questions there? I apologize, I can't see the chat.
Yeah, a few questions about just whether or not their community is opted in or out, and I'm answering those through the chat. Rosemary did ask a question about whether or not we would consider taking additional opt-ins. I've let her know that we would consider that, and if we decided to do that, we'd make that announcement via the website by the end of the week, but not to assume so until that announcement is made.
That's correct.
Moving up, there's a question from Shay that the question may need to be restated with a little bit more detail. Okay, well, actually, it's in the text here about the expansion of an existing facility. That's new construction if it's on a new site. I asked if the site was an expansion of an existing facility or not. And Shay, if you're online, you could just unmute, and there you are.
I'm here. Hey, okay,
got,
so I know that can get confusing. So what I was trying to figure out is what we've been trying to do is serve an underserved area. And so, there are some existing childcare that qualify that would be willing to expand their footprint to this underserved area, but then would it be deemed a new build?
Are you breaking ground on a new facility, or are you acquiring an existing facility?
So no, this would be breaking ground on a new facility as an expansion of an existing, if that makes sense.
Right. So we wouldn't be able to fund the construction of the new building. What we could do is if that provider had an existing building that they wanted to add on to, that would be eligible, but we wouldn't be able to fund a foundation to roof brand new building on a new site. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or the other option would be, and I think this is clear, so I don't mean to belabor it, but if they found a site that had a building on it and acquired that building, they could use the funds to acquire that building or to improve that building.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions out there?
I have a question, and I put it in the chat, but I wasn't sure if it was answered or not. So I'm in the pre-licensure stage, and I'm located I'm in Nashville in Davidson County. But I am looking at the surrounding counties. So do you have to reside in the county or just reside in the state of Tennessee?
So the application would be submitted to the local government that has jurisdiction over that property. So whether you were, so if, for example, if you are in Montgomery County, regardless of if you're in Parksville city limits or outside, that can go through Montgomery County, depending on the location of the facility that would be improved.
So what if I live in Nashville, but I'm looking for a location in Montgomery County?
That would be fine.
That would be fine. Okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yeah,
Yeah,
you could.
I don't believe there are any residency requirements on the business or the proprietor.
That's correct.
Christy has her hand
And
raised. I'm sorry.
will we be able to get that map? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we'll be able to get that map that you put up in the beginning of the areas that have opted in?
Absolutely, yeah. It will be on the website that has all of our grant information there. These slides are available on there, so you'll be able to open up the slides and see it right there.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, there's another question with the hand up.
I have a question.
Okay.
If y'all can hear me, I don't know if I can.
Yes,
Um,
yes. Here you go.
I
ahead.
kind of got in here a couple of days late because I had downloaded this meeting group thing. So I kind of got in here late. So this grant is basically if you find like a building that's already been a child care facility to like expand it or to purchase it. I kind of missed that part.
So yes, yeah, the grant is to, the eligible items that you can do through the grant are to either take an existing facility and make changes to it, to an existing facility that's already a child care facility, it's already being used, and make changes to it that will allow us to assist at least 20 more new students. Now, one of those things that could be done could be an addition, adding on an additional, X number of square feet. That is an eligible expense. Another eligible expense would be to purchase an existing building, currently not used for childcare, but go ahead and purchase that building and then make any changes to that building that you would need to do in order to meet your licensure requirements.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Yes, ma'am.
Matt, Stephen Chambers has his hand up, and also Christy.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Mayor Chambers, will you go, please?
You're on mute, Mayor.
Mayor Chambers, you there?
Go ahead and go to Christy, and then Mayor, I know you can hear us, so you might want to call in using the phone number for the audio. Looks like you're going back and forth on mute, but the mic's not picking up.
Okay.
You see
Or
that
feel
phone
free
number?
to write it in the chat, Mayor. Whatever's easiest. Christy, go ahead. What's your question? Christy, can you hear us?
It appears she's on mute.
Okay. Christy, if you can hear us, please take yourself off mute and we'll answer your question.
And that goes back to Mayor Chambers. The question is about GNRC or the local government reaching out to the facilities. And I'll let you take that one. But this is one of the most important reasons why we have the opt-in period, because the outreach needs to be conducted. Matt?
That's correct. That's correct. No, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we at GNRC are going to be doing the outreach to the daycares that are eligible. We were able to pull the list from the state of the daycares within those opt-in communities that are enrolled in the USDA food program. And so we will be able to reach out to them and make sure that they're aware. However, if you have a facility in your community that's top of mind, absolutely feel free to share the information with them as well. But know that it is our intent to make sure that that we can reach all those eligible daycares using GNRC staff.
And just to be clear, so our outreach will be limited to a letter of notification to the eligible daycares that are on the list provided to us by the state. So if you have specific daycares in mind that you want to work with, please feel free to reach out to those independently. We just want to make sure that folks don't miss the opportunity. That's our main focus.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. And I do want to point out that, we do have very limited funds. As unfortunately, just a little over $900,000. We know that money's not going to go very far. We do anticipate this to be highly competitive, but we don't want that to scare anyone away, because one thing we really want to do is, even if we can't, even if we're not able to fund all the projects that we want to be able to show the demand out in our region and relay that to our elected leaders and our partners at state and federal government, to really just highlight this issue in our region.
Matt, it's Rosemary. I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead, Rosemary.
Is the effort going to be to completely fund programs that fall under that $500,000 or in that don't exceed that? Or are you going to try to dole out money to as many as you can and expect them to come up with the difference?
So the plan that we have right now is to take the applications as they come in and score those. If the top 5 are able to be done below that 990,000 that we have, then those will move forward. If only 2 are able to be done with that 990,000 that we have, those will be the ones that move forward.
Okay, and just one other real short question. Is there a reason you can't go ahead and release the pre-application now instead of waiting until next week?
It's just that we're migrating everything over to a simple fillable form that we wanted to wait to roll out until after we had all of our questions asked, and we held this webinar in case there was something that we didn't think of.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Matt, Candace Hansen has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Candace.
Yes, I have 2 questions. So is anyone in particular kind of assigned, I guess, to reaching out to those providers in the pre-licensure process to notify them? And the second question is, those that are in the pre-licensure process that are not yet confirmed in the food program, but they plan on utilizing the food program, should they still go ahead and apply, or how does that work?
So the answer to your first question, the only kind of building off of what Michael said earlier, the only daycares that will be able to do the outreach for at GNRC are those that are on the state's licensure list that are already enrolled in the USDA food care program. So if there's a child care provider that's not on that list, then or is planning on using the USDA food program but isn't yet enrolled, we would be willing to work with them, but we would rely on our local partners with that outreach, because our ability to do all of the outreach is limited to just the data that we have.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm the small business coordinator with Tennessee Child Care Resource and Referral. So we work directly with mostly pre-licensure providers. And I don't know if I'm able to like shoot you an email or give you a call to talk about the best way we can reach out to them and make sure that we're giving them the information that they need and according to what you guys expect. So
yeah, absolutely. No, please reach out. We'd love to partner with you. We know that our ability to do outreach is limited. Our local government's ability to do outreach is limited. And so any way that we can partner to get more information out there, we'd be glad to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Any other questions out there? Amy, you see anything that I may have missed?
There's a couple of conversations in the chat, I believe that Michael has already taken care of.
Okay. Excellent. I'll just go ahead and reiterate the grants@gnrc.org email address, where we'll be accepting our where we will be taking all of the questions in. Again, this just helps us make sure that we're able to follow everything, and then also relay those back onto the website, because your question and answer might end up benefiting someone else as well.
I think Mayor Chambers had a question about outreach. Let me go back up here. He was asking if they could get a copy of the list and also do outreach, or would we prefer having all the outreach come from GNRC?
No, I can. I'm happy to get with you, Mayor, and show you where we pulled the list and what we're using.
I think as just a matter of policy, we're going to be willing to share that list with anybody, any of the local governments, I should say. Probably need to limit that commitment to the local government, but we'll share that list with y'all so that you can do your outreach. Our efforts are intended to do minimum notifications so people just aren't unaware of the effort. You know your community and your local needs more than we do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
I have a question. So if someone was a current provider and they didn't participate in the food program, but they were willing to, so that they would qualify to apply, is that okay?
Yeah.
Like if they, okay.
Matt, and let me, there's a couple of things that we're going to continue to finalize through this week. That's one of them. I think we're going to need to make sure the language isn't suggesting ineligibility. If that's something that if it's a program you're going to come into, that, we want to give you that opportunity, because at the very least, we are trying to demonstrate need, as Matt said, and make the case for significantly more funding being put towards this type of use. And then the other thing that Matt said at the beginning that was presented and has been presented up to this point as a requirement is the requirement that the improvement lead to serving at least 20 additional new students. We may soften that a little bit, knowing that the scoring criteria itself will weight those applications that serve the most students favorably. But we may want to soften that language, Matt, just so it doesn't appear as though, I mean, that's a hard number to guess anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't want to draw a hard line on that number.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else out there? Amy, Michael, I might be missing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm at the doctor's office with my kids, so it's been kind of hectic. I had a question about, I know I mentioned about Rutherford County, Murfreesboro not being on the list, that maybe not have opted in. What do I need to do to follow up to see if that's a possibility? Because my business is going to be in Murfreesboro.
So again, as we said, we already had our option period, but we want to make sure that we're able to keep everything according to the tight timeline that we have. But we also don't want to be drawing very strong lines either. So be able to connect with you and possibly the local leadership there to determine whether or not that interest is there.
Okay, sounds good.
I think we can just go ahead and commit to, if you're on the webinar today and you don't see your community listed and you want to request us to reach out to those mayors and let them know that there was interest on this webinar, we're happy to do that. If you have your own contacts with local government, please do that yourself. But we'll just go ahead and commit to doing that outreach as we consider an extension of the opt-in deadline through. It would be just through the end of this week, though, so we will have to certainly act on that today.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I did put a message in the chat and specifically mentioned Murfreesboro, so I definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely. Any other questions out there? Amy, Michael, anything I'm missing?
Hello?
Hey there. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Hello. Yes.
I can't. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we can hear
I
you.
wonder why I can't hear you. Let me check my microphone.
We do have
Okay, I'm
Carolyn
on.
Davis with her hand up as well.
Go ahead.
Okay. Is this Teresa you're recognizing?
Go right ahead.
Are you speaking to Teresa?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I'm so sorry, y'all. I just got on. Somebody with child care resources, I was in the middle of getting ready for work, sent me this real quick. I thought I had missed it. Y'all, we desperately need a daycare in our area. I'm trying to get a church across the street from me. There's a they said they would sell it to me. I know it needs some structural changes to it's gonna need, and so that's what I'm seeking some help with. It's a really nice building. It's 4302 square feet, and it literally appraises for 197. They said they'd sell it to me for 50, and then I know it would need, like, say maybe the windows that go up and down, because it's got church panes in the front lobby.
Well, we will, no, that would be an eligible project, the ability to purchase a facility and make the required retrofits in order to get it within licensure requirements. I don't want to get into too many specific projects here.
Okay.
But just kind of want to keep this as more of a general overview as possible. But man, what you're describing sounds like it would be an eligible project if it were able to be, if you were able to work with the local government and do the pre-application and begin that process.
Okay, so how do I begin the process?
The process, we will make the pre-application available on our website, and that you'll be able to fill that in, and that will then go over to your local government. That will then be able to work with you and vet those projects to determine ability to move forward.
Okay, when you say local government, are we saying our county government, our county seat?
It would, in some cases, yes. In some cases, it would be your municipality. Where's the facility located?
I am in Dyer County in New Bern, Tennessee. Newbern.
Well, unfortunately, that is outside of our service area. We're only able to support the 13 counties around Nashville. However, what we can do, if you can give us your email, we can forward you to our partnering agency that does does support work in your county, and make sure that, and then let them take it from there. Okay.
Okay. And where'd you say you was going to send it to me?
Just go ahead and put your email address in the chat, please, and we'll connect you with the development district of that region.
Awesome. I sure will. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, let me get to
that. Okay, Matt, we do have Caroline Davis with her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Caroline.
Caroline, you're muted.
Not able to hear you. I don't know if you're still on mute.
It looks like she's in the car and trying to get herself off mute.
Uh-oh. Oh, go ahead, and while she's working on that, if there's anything else out there, I will point out if there's something that you're not able to ask today, to please go ahead and be sure to email it to that grants@gnrc.org email address, just in case you think of something that you didn't have the opportunity to ask while we're here. That's just fine.
think Caroline lowered her hand, so maybe she already has her question answered.
Sounds good. Thank you, Amy. Anyone else out there?
I don't see any.
Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and leave this on then. You have the email address here. We look forward to working with you all and learning about the needs out in our community and hopefully helping get some of these projects done with the limited resources that we have. But we're definitely looking forward to this partnership over the next year or two.